Good morning, this is Rashad Mitchell coming to you live from my YouTube channel as I continue on my part series, professional sports teams that didn't win the championship during that season. This is part 58. The team I'm going to be talking about today is the 1990 Buffalo Bills. Now, this is a team by far was the best Buffalo Bills team ever. You know what I'm saying? When you look at how they played during that season and how they performed during that season in terms of they was 13-3. The offense was at the peak of their powers. They was able to score a combined 95 points in the 1990 playoffs. Against the Miami Dolphins, they scored 44 points. And against the Los Angeles Raiders at the time, they scored 51 points. And they won their games in double digits. But they beat the Buffalo Bills by 10 points, 44-34. And they beat the Los Angeles Raiders, I believe, 51-3. So they were just a dominant team in the playoffs in terms of what they did in the playoffs. 44-51. So that's, do the math, that's 95 points. So this team was definitely playing at the right time, at the right moment, at the right time, doing their thing. Scoring 95 points in the playoffs total. But it didn't matter because it faced the New York Giants, who they played during the regular season and beat the Giants at Giants Stadium with a backup quarterback in Jeff Hostetler, and they was able to lose, unfortunately, on their side. If you're a Buffalo Bills fan, they lost by a score of 20-19. The team had a 13-3 record. They were 8-0 at home for the second time in their franchise history, 5-3 on the road. They were coached by Marv Levy, obviously. The Bills' offense was one of the best in the league. They scored 428 points. They averaged 26.75 points per game. Score was first in the league in terms of the points scored per game, 26.75. And since they only gave up 263 points, sixth in the league, the point differential was 165 points, 10.3 per game, which was the best in the NFL in 1990, and as well as the best point differential in franchise history. So Buffalo's 48 offensive touchdowns, 28 passing, 20 rushing, also led the league. Now, defensive end Bruce Smith was named Associated Press Defensive Player of the Year for 1990, recording 101 tackles, 4 forced fumbles, and a career-high 19 sacks. Also, this Buffalo Bills team was featured and chronicled on October 2nd, 2008 for America's Game, The Missing Rings, as one of the 5 greatest NFL teams to never win the Super Bowl. This team had Jim Kelly. They had the usual, great players on that team. Offensively, they had Jim Kelly, had Thurman Thomas, James Lofton, Andre Reed. Defensively, they had, obviously Bruce Smith, Cornelius Bennett, Darryl Talley, guys like that on the defensive side. Here's some of the highlights that stood out. Thurman Thomas on September 24th, 1990 on Monday night. Thurman Thomas rushed for 214 yards against the New York Jets. It was the second highest total in the history of the Monday Night Football. Bruce Smith had 8 tackles, 2 sacks, and 4 hurries against the Bills in their victory over Philadelphia. Bruce Smith had 4 sacks, 9 tackles, 2 pressures against the Indianapolis Colts. So these are some of the highlights, the games that stood out, the performances that stood out during that season. Now, Thurman Thomas led the NFL in total yards from scrimmage for the second consecutive season. His 1,297 yards led the AFC and was second in the NFL to Barry Sanders. Thurman Thomas had at least 100 total yards. Thurman Thomas had at least 100 total yards in 10 of the Bills' 16 games. After gaining 219 total yards versus the New York Jets, Thurman Thomas was named Offensive Player of the Week. Jim Kelly was the NFL passing leader with 101.2 passer rating. Jim Kelly was most valuable player in Pro Bowl. Obviously, Bruce Smith was Defensive Player of the Year in 1990. He was the UPI AFL AFC Player of the Year defensively. Bruce Smith Newspaper Enterprise Association Defensive Player of the Year award. He won that. He set a team record for most sacks in a single season, 19. Bruce Smith was the AFC Defensive Player of the Month in December. And Thurman Thomas was the NFL combined yards from scrimmage leader. So this team was the best Buffalo Bills team. All the Buffalo Bills teams that I saw, they were the best because they just was at another level as an offense. So let's look at playoffs, what they did in the playoffs. Now, they beat the Dolphins 44-34 in Buffalo. They just did their thing. They did what they did best. It was a shootout. Despite how, the weather was very, very cold. It was 31 degrees with light snow. And it was a high-scoring affair. Jim Kelly versus Dan Marino. The Bills never trailed in this game. The weather steady, light snow had crews occasionally coming out to shovel off the 10 and 5 yard lines. Despite the conditions, both team offenses were explosive. After the winning AFC East crown from the Dolphins a few weeks earlier, the Bills also ended the Dolphins season in a game which had combined for 78 points. Jim Kelly had 3 touchdown passes. He threw for 339 yards. Thurman Thomas had 117 yards rushing on 2 touchdowns and 32 carries. James Lofton had 7 catches for 149 yards and a touchdown. So they were clicking. They even clicked even more when they beat the Los Angeles Raiders in the AFC Championship game in Buffalo by a score of 51-3. They got off to a 21-3 start in the first quarter, and then they scored 20 more points in the second quarter. The game was over at halftime. They was up 41-3 at halftime. The game was over. Simple as that. So that's what it boils down to. James Lofton scored on a 13-yard touchdown pass from Jim Kelly. Thurman Thomas scored on a 12-yard run. Dell Kelly intercepted the pass for a 27-yard interception return for a touchdown. That was in the first quarter. Second quarter, Kenneth Davis did his thing. He scored 2 touchdowns, one on a 1-yard run and another on a 3-yard run. And then James Lofton had an 8-yard pass catch from Jim Kelly. And then in the fourth quarter, Kenneth Davis scored on a 1-yard run, and Buffalo, Scott Norwood hit kick a field goal to make it a 39-yard field goal, and they won 51-3. So Jim Kelly was 17 out of 23, 300 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. Now, Thurman Thomas was doing his thing in the playoffs because he had 25 carries for 138 yards and a touchdown. Lofton had another big game. He had 113 yards, receiving 2 touchdowns and 5 catches, and did his thing. And when they scored the 41 points in the first half, that was an NFL playoff record at that time. I don't know if that still stands as a record, but they were just explosive, man. That's why I want to talk about this team, because this Buffalo Bills team was a great team. They did their thing. I mean, they was definitely a team that should have won the whole thing. It didn't happen. So now let's go to Super Bowl 25 to talk about what went wrong as it lost to the Giants 2019. Now the thing, I remember this Super Bowl very well because the Giants won this Super Bowl because of their offense. Their offense is the reason why they won the Super Bowl. Because they had the ball for 40 minutes and 30 seconds. Time of possession was the difference maker in the Super Bowl because they kept the ball away from Buffalo for so many minutes and some seconds, and that's what kept Buffalo from having as many possessions as they should have got. Now they had a 19-17 lead. Thurman Thomas made a great run. He bounced off a would-be tackle for the Giants, and he ran it in for the touchdown. Actually, also, this is the 30th anniversary, 2020 marks the 30th anniversary of the Super Bowl that was played during that season. Obviously, it was in the 91 Super Bowl, but It was of the 1990 season. So it's 30 years ago. 1990 season. That was the year Giants beat the Buffalo Bills in the Super Bowl. So the Bills was favored by 7 points. The Super Bowl was in Tampa Bay. The Hall of Famers that was in this game was Ralph Wilson, Bill Polian, Marv Levy, Jim Kelly, James Lofton, Andre Reed, Bruce Smith. Thurman Thomas for the Giants was Wellington Mara, George Young, Bill Parcells, and Lawrence Taylor. Now this was going through the Gulf War conflict. You know, this was during that time when he was obviously sung the Star Spangled Banner. But he's going through that, conflict overseas in the Middle East, Gulf War. So Buffalo Bills had their no-huddle explosive offense, 13-3, leading the league in totals points scored with 428 points. Advanced to the second Super Bowl, the Giants, on the other hand, had a 13-3 record as well as the Buffalo Bills had a 13-3 record. But the Giants, they was not as dominant. They were really, really good, but not really great. You know what I'm saying? Like, yes, they beat the Chicago Bears 30-3 at the old Giants Stadium. Then they went over to Candlestick and defeated the 3P that the San Francisco 49ers was trying to get, because they had won the last two Super Bowls in 88 and 89. And they beat the San Francisco 49ers 15-13 on a Matt Barr field goal. He kicked like 5 field goals in that game. So, you know what I'm saying? That was the difference maker in that game. But the Giants had a ball control offense, and that's why they won the Super Bowl, because they had the ball for 40 minutes and 30 seconds. And they had a defense that only allowed a league low 211 points. And Super Bowl 25 became the first Super Bowl to feature two teams representing the same state, even though the Giants technically played in New Jersey. So, obviously, this game was known as Scott Norwood's last-second missed field goal that went wide to the right. It started a 4-game losing streak for the Super Bowl for the Buffalo Bills. And this game became the only Super Bowl that was decided by 1 point, and the first Super Bowl in which neither team committed a turnover. You can make a case this was the greatest Super Bowl ever played, because how it was played was so crisp. It was just a razor sharp, Super Bowl. The Giants also set a Super Bowl record holding possession of the ball. They held it for 40 minutes and 33 seconds. I don't know if I said 40 minutes and 30 seconds. I might have got that wrong, but if I did, I'll make the correction. They had the ball for 40 minutes and 33 seconds. And the thing about the Buffalo Bills, they had a lead in this game. I remember the Super Bowl very well, obviously. The Giants they was trailing 12-3. Had a 12-3 deficit in the second quarter, but they made a 75 touchdown drive that consumed a Super Bowl record 9 minutes and 29 seconds off the clock. Otis Anderson had 21 carries for 102 yards, 1 touchdown, and was named Super Bowl MVP. He was the first awardee to receive the newly named Pete Rozelle Trophy. Anderson also recorded 1 reception for 7 yards. The NFL, in its 100 greatest game series, ranked it at number 10, the 10th greatest game of all time. So, to counteract the Bills' no-huddle offense, the Giants used a tough-nosed conservative plan on both sides of the ball. On offense, the plan was to use a power running game, utilizing Otis Anderson and aided by quarterback rollouts, bootlegs, and play-action fakes. And Mark Brevard, the tight end at the time, later recalled, he said that we came out with 3 tight ends. Fat slobs, picking you up, moving you, and letting you tackle O.J. Anderson if you could. This enabled them to take time off the clock and limit Buffalo's possessions. So the Giants set a Super Bowl record for time possession with 40 minutes and 33 seconds, including 22 minutes in the second half. So on defense, the New York Giants wanted to be physical defensively with the Buffalo Bills wideouts and play with extra defensive backs to concentrate stopping the Bills' passing game while shifting focus away from trying to stop Buffalo's running game. In his book, The Education of a Coach, David Halberstam wrote that one defensive coordinator, Bill Belichick, who was the defensive coordinator for the Giants at the time, specific plans to combat the Bills involved convincing his defense, who had been the best unit against the run in the NFL that season, that they would win the game if Thurman Thomas ran for more than 100 yards. Belichick also felt that Jim Kelly was not as good at reading defenses as some other elite quarterbacks like Joe Montana, and that Kelly tended to freeze what he was seeing from a series and then use that information on the next one, which meant the Giants could be a step ahead of him all game if they alternated their cover plans from drive to drive. So that was their strategy. Strange as it seems, they was gonna win the game if Thurman Thomas ran for 100 yards. But lo and behold, he did run for over 100 yards, and he played excellent in the Super Bowl, including scoring the go-ahead touchdown to make it 19 to 17 before the field goal was made to make it 20 to 17. So let's look at the first quarter. The contrasting strategies were evident during the first quarter. To force the Bills to punt on the opening drive of the game, the Giants consumed 6:15 off the clock by marching 58 yards to 10 plays to score on a 28-yard field goal from Matt Barr. In that drive, New York ran 5 plays rushing and 5 passing plays. The Bills struck right back on the ensuing possession with the 5-play, 66-yard drive that took 123 off the clock, including the tip 61-yard completion from Kelly to wide receiver James Lofton to set up Scott Norwood's 23-yard field goal that tied the game at 3-3. So after forcing the Giants to punt on the ensuing possession, the Bills' offensive strategy started to work to perfection. Jim Kelly led the Bills on a 12-play, 80-yard drive that consumed 427, moved the ball so effectively that the team never faced the third down. So Kelly completed 6 consecutive passes for Andre Reed for 62 yards, and running back Don Smith capped it off with a 1-yard touchdown run to give the Buffalo Bills a 10-3 lead early in the second quarter. Smith's touchdown run was his only carry of the game, and the last carry of his career for Don Smith. Reed's 5 first quarter receptions were a Super Bowl record. So we go to the second quarter. The momentum is obviously in favor of the Buffalo Bills. If the train punts, the Giants would pin at their own 7-yard line. So on second down, defensive end Bruce Smith sacked quarterback Jeff Hostetler in the end zone for a safety. So now the Buffalo Bills have a 12-3 lead. Now, I think I remember that game. If Bruce Smith would have stripped the ball from Hostetler, it would have been 17-3. Maybe the Buffalo Bills would have won that Super Bowl, but they didn't. So on the play, Smith had a chance to force a fumble since Hostetler was holding the football with his throwing hand. But to his credit, Hostetler held the ball away from Smith, helping to ensure that only 2 points that would be surrendered. Because you talk about a forced fumble, somebody from Buffalo recovers it. Instead of getting 2 points, you're getting 7 points. And good thing that Hostetler was able to hold on to the ball. So later on, the Giants got the ball at their own 13-yard line with 3:43 left in the second quarter. New York abandoned their long drive strategy, employed a quick strike attack of their own. It worked as Hostetler led the Giants 87 yards, scored on a 14-yard touchdown pass to wide receiver Stephen Baker with 25 seconds left in the second quarter to cut the Giants' lead to 12-10. That was a huge drive. I mean, they had to go from their own 13-yard line with 3:43 to go and went 87 yards. So you're the defense of Buffalo, you got to find a way to make it stop. But that's what made this. The Giants won the Super Bowl because of their offense. The defense did the best they could, but the Giants won the Super Bowl 25 against Buffalo because of their offense. So the third quarter starts. The Giants opened the third quarter and continued with their original game plan, their strategy. They drove 75 yards and 14 plays to score on Otis Anderson's 1-yard touchdown run, giving the Giants a 17-12 lead. So the drive consumed a then, at the time, Super Bowl record 9 minutes and 29 seconds, which was surpassed by the Giants in Super Bowl 42. I believe, yeah, Super Bowl 42. And included 4 successful third down conversions. Now, this was the highlight of the third down conversions was, I remember this very well, a 14-yard pass that Jeff Hostetler threw to wide receiver Mark Ingram on third down and 13 yards to go. This is on 3rd and 13. Only thing you gotta do is keep everything in front of you for our Buffalo Bills, defender. But Ingram caught a short pass. He broke 5 tackles from the Buffalo Bills to get the first down and keep the drive alive. By this point, the Bills' offense had gone nearly 2 hours of real time, counting the halftime show, since they last possessed the ball. So after forcing Buffalo to punt on its ensuing possession, New York drove to the Bills' 35-yard line, but on 4th and 2, Smith tackled Anderson for a 2-yard loss, and Buffalo then took over and stormed down the field, advancing 63 yards in just 4 plays, and scoring on a 31-yard burst from running back Thurman Thomas on the first play of the fourth quarter to regain the lead 19-17. Now, Thomas's touchdown run marked 1,000 points scored in Super Bowl history, 1,001 with the extra points. Now we go to the fourth quarter. Before the Bills defenders had the chance to catch their breath, the Giants did their thing again. They had another long drive. This one was 14 plays for 74 yards, and half of which came off passes from Hostetler to tight end Mark Bavaro. Took another 7 minutes and 32 seconds off the clock. The Bills managed to halt the drive at their own 3-yard line, and linebacker Cornelius Bennett broke up Hostetler's third down pass, but Barr kicked his second field goal to give New York a 2019 lead. So the Giants just did their thing, just shortened the game. That's basically what the Giants did in that Super Bowl. They shortened the game. They gave Buffalo Bills shorter possessions, and they shortened the game with that time possession, man. 40 minutes and 30 seconds, that's a long time. Especially for a defense, Buffalo Bills, being on the field for so long. So, the Bills finally forced New York to punt and took the ball at their own 10-yard line after Serron Adell's 38-yard kick with 2:16 remaining. So in the final possession of the Bills, Kelly led the team down the field with a mix of scrambles, short passes, and set Thomas runs, of which the last for a healthy, very critical 7 yards, managing to get the Bills to the Giants' 29-yard line within field goal range with 8 seconds to go. Now this is as tough as it gets for a kicker, any kicker, to kick a field goal, to give your team a walk-off, game-winning field goal on grass, 47 yards. Scott Norwood was up there to do it. 47 yards. The kick sailed wide right, less than a yard outside the goalpost upright. And to this day, this is the only potential Super Bowl winning field goal attempt which the kicker's team would lose if the kick was missed. After Norwood's missed, the Giants ran out the clock. Jim Kelly completed 18 of 30 passes for 212 yards with no interceptions by adding another 23 yards on 6 rushing attempts. Meanwhile, Jeff Hostetler outplayed Jim Kelly in this game. 20 of 32 passes for 222 yards and a touchdown rush for 10 yards. Dave Meggett did his thing. He had 129 combined net yards, 48 yards rushing, 18 receiving yards, 27 on punt returns, and 26 on kickoff returns. But the best, obviously, performances came from the running backs. Otis Anderson had 102 yards rushing, caught a pass for 7 yards, and scored on a touchdown. Thurman Thomas played a great game. He scored a touchdown, rushed for 135 yards, and caught 5 passes for 55 yards. 5 passes for 55 yards. He had 190 total yards from scrimmage, and Thomas's 135 yards on the most yards rushing for a member of a losing team. And this also was the only second Super Bowl to have 2 running backs run for 100 yards. The only second Super Bowl that you had 2 running backs running for 100 yards. So the aftermath of the Super Bowl was that the defensive game plan for the Giants by Bill Belichick at the time has been included in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And this Giants win made Belichick get a job as a head coach for the Cleveland Browns. Before he became a great coach at the Patriots, he had coached the Cleveland Browns, and Tom Coughlin was a wide receivers coach, coached the Boston College Eagles. So this was a great Super Bowl, and it was the first Super Bowl in which neither team committed a turnover. The only other Super Bowl to date without a turnover was Super Bowl 34, when the St. Louis Rams, great show on turf, beat the Tennessee Titans 23-16. Also, Paul Zimmerman, who wrote for Sports Illustrated, felt that Thurman Thomas, with his production, should have won the game MVP despite the team losing. It's like Chuck Howley won MVP in Super Bowl V when the Cowboys lost to the Colts in the field goal. So that's all that needs to be said about this game. This was by far the best team the Buffalo Bills had to win it all. This is their best team by far. You're a Buffalo Bills fan. This was your best Buffalo Bills team because they were better than the 91 Buffalo Bills, the 92 Buffalo Bills, 93 Buffalo Bills. This team was a big time team. Now, let me see. The 91 Buffalo Bills, what was their record? Quite sure they had the home field advantage. I think they beat the Denver Broncos in the championship game. Buffalo was 13-3. Oh no, I think Buffalo had the best team that they had was the 90 team because, okay, yes, they were 13-3 the following year and went back to the Super Bowl. But when you look at it, they faced a great team in the Washington Redskins. A Redskins team that probably was one of the more underrated great teams of all time. That was a great team. They were a great team. Great team. And I don't think the Buffalo Bills was going to beat them. I was surprised by what happened, by the end result. Yes, they had the best record in the AFC. They handled their business against Kansas City, and then they beat Denver Broncos 10-7, dominated by the defense. But to me, and plus, and rightfully so, the Redskins were 7-point favorites. The Redskins, that was a great team. A great team. This team in 1990, Buffalo Bills was definitely a great team that should have won the championship in 1990. But they were better than the 91 team. Yeah, if I do the research, the 91 team, yes, the Buffalo Bills went 13-3 like they did in 1990. But the problem is that they were the underdogs to the Redskins, rightfully so, because that Redskins team was a dominant team. They were great at what they did. They were 14-2, so that's common sense for them to be the favorites. They were 14-2. Double check the record that the Redskins had. The Redskins had a 14-2 record. Buffalo had a 13-3 record. The Redskins had a 14-2 record. I mean, the Redskins were loaded. I mean, that was a great team. So I got really look at this Buffalo Bills team. I remember that team, obviously, 1990. So that Buffalo Bills team was the best team that could have won it all. That team definitely should have won it that year. They were better than the Giants. The Giants were a good team, but they wasn't, as good as the Buffalo Bills. And the Buffalo Bills was explosive. They did their thing from an offensive standpoint. I mean, they should have won it that year. They should have won it that year. I mean, that's common sense. They should have won it that year. I mean, I think they should have won that championship that season. So that concludes this look at this Giants. The Buffalo Bills, 1990 Buffalo Bills team. This is part 58 of the professional sports teams that didn't win the championship. Part 58, the 1990 Buffalo Bills, a team that definitely should have won it all that year. Please subscribe, like, comment, do whatever you can to support the channel. This is Rashad Mitchell coming to you live from my YouTube channel. Until then, talk to you tomorrow.